Hello, everyone. I'm Bryce Whitaker. Welcome to the Gamers Lunch Break. Today, I'm super excited at our guest. We have on some people from Ghenos Games. Now, Americans may be wondering what Ghenos Games is, and we're about to find out. And later on the show, we're going to have Jamey Stegmaier here to talk about Scythe and all of his other projects. But first, let me bring on Anna and Alfredo, and I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, guys. Anna and Alfredo Genovese. Is that correct?
Yes. Good pronunciation. Excellent Italian, Bryce. Good morning. Prego.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you for the American audience, we don't really know what Ghenos Games is, but it's a big thing in Italy. It's a big company. Can you tell us a little bit about Ghenos Games?
Yes, for sure. Ghenos is a publisher. It's based in Milan, and we founded. It has been founded by friends at the university, mostly engineers like me, and by my wife Anna. She has been the only employee for the beginning, for 4 years, from 2005 up to 2009. Because at that time, Ghenos Games was not my main job, and then I decided to start and work 14 hours per day in Ghenos Games. We started as a publisher, and we were very fond of sports, and so we decided to publish sports-related board games like Bolide. I'm the last of the designer. I'm very humble, but Bolide. I'm the designer of Bolide, which is a racing car games. I think distributed in US by Rio Grande.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. No, not so bad on BGG, even if it's old, basically old.
Now you went from publishing to localization of several major titles.
Yes, we started publishing our games, and then we met people that made games always related to sports games. So there was some period in which some games were ours and some games were from other people. But basically, at the beginning, sports-related games.
And we have published other games like Leader One. On cycling and Race the Wind on sailing, so very good good games of simulation, I'd say. And then we moved to the localization area with and through Crossmaster Arena from Ankama, and we have been involved in huge tournaments. We localized in an exclusive way Crossmaster Arena to Italy. And we made practice, a lot of practice, and we enlarged our customers, and we were trained. And but when Crossmaster Arena started to fall and to decline, we decided to enlarge our views. Of course, I'm talking about our small market in Italy, but a fast growing market, and we were finding companies with talent, and we met Jamey, and that's why we are here. And we met also Lorenzo Silva from a Horrible Guild. So, and we decided to localize every single product from Jamey and also from Horrible. And after this, we have built a good catalog in Italian, and so we are here.
Great. So this leads us to Stonemaier Games and Jamey. So let's go ahead and bring Jamey on. Jamey, welcome to the Gamers Lunch Break. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. That was thank you so much for having me. It was nice to hear some of the backstory from Anna and Alfredo. They've been wonderful partners to work with over the years.
Thank you.
And I think the American audience might like to know, and Anna and Alfredo, you can just kind of guess here, but if we were to take a game like Scythe, which is extremely famous and well known. How many Italians are playing that game now? About?
Oh,
We're reaching 7,000.
yeah.
We're reaching the 7,000. Considering the Italian market, it is really a huge number.
Yeah. Jamey is an international success. Welcome to the show. Jamey, I kind of wanted to start with you. You have this great YouTube channel. By the way, everybody should check it out. It's informative. It's well organized. If you want to be a game designer, it's a great place to start. I'm not going to ask you about your favorite games because you do it so well on your YouTube channel. But I do want to know, what games made you a game designer? What were the ones that sort of forged you into that role?
Well, I started playing games and designing games when I was pretty young, when I was 7 or 8 years old. And some of those games that I played certainly laid the foundation for games that I would produce in the future. I was playing games like Scotland Yard was an early one that I played. There's a game called Key to the Kingdom that I loved playing as a kid. Stratego I loved. And so those games I think I definitely internalized. And then when I returned to kind of and Magic the Gathering, I played a lot of Magic, and that has definitely influenced my game design. And then as an adult, when I returned to the hobby, I really got into Euro style games. So it started with Catan, and then Agricola, Stone Age, Fresco. Fresco had a huge influence on viticulture. And then hundreds of games since then. But those were some of the foundational games for me.
That's great. I loved Scotland Yard as a kid. It's one of my favorite games. And I went to Fury of Dracula is on my shelf as that sort of style of game. Alfredo and Anna, I think did you guys have a question about you wanted to ask Jamey about where he got his ideas from?
Well, my question for Jamey is how do you preserve and do you feed your creativity with maybe parallel activities? You know that I'm a coach of volleyball, for example, and I want to train and to teach volleyball, and this is important for my job. Right. Do you have some activities that inspire you and make you better and better in the ball game?
Yeah, there are a couple of different sources. Similar to like volleyball, one of the things is I play a lot of games. I try to play a lot. I try to watch a lot of reviews. I like to listen to people talk about games from different perspectives. And so from within the gaming industry, that I love just talking about games, playing games, learning about games. Outside of it, though, I love, for example, I don't play a lot of video games, digital games, but I do like watching videos about people talking about them. And that has definitely influenced my game design as well. And then even further outside of that, I read a lot of fiction. Earlier, we were talking about the Red Rising books. I love fiction, particularly fantasy and sci-fi. And so some of the themes and plots and characters in those worlds definitely influence the types of elements that I put into our games as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. Now, Jamey, when we talk about game design, you have this great video on your YouTube channel where in just about 10 minutes, you go through the steps. And the brainstorming step, I'm a game designer too. That's kind of the way we make our money, the meat of the process. But I'd love to ask game designers, what do you do when you hit a wall, when you hit that mechanic, that thing that you just can't break through, and you have to do something? What do you do?
Yeah, there may be three things. I'll answer three quick answers. One is that I always try to have 2 projects going at a time, 2 game design projects. And so if I do hit a wall in project A, I sometimes just put it aside and move on to project B for a little bit, kind of clear my head for project A, relax on that project, and refocus on the other one for a little bit. And then when I come back to project A, usually I'm refreshed. I have some new ideas, and that seems to help. The second thing I can do is if it is a specific mechanism that I've run into, then I try to go research that mechanism. I look at ways that other games have implemented that mechanism, Sometimes I'll just watch videos about those games or read reviews. Sometimes I'll play some of those games to remind myself of what works, what doesn't work. And the third thing, I had a third thing, but I think I forgot the third thing. So
we'll stick with two.
Okay.
There you go. So one of the things I found fascinating when I watched that video on your game design is the different points in which you do play testing. And you kind of start out with some friends, and then you actually your company goes to paid play testers. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, so a lot of the early playtesting is just local. It's me playing the game with Alex and Joe, who work at Stonemaier Games, with friends, with Alan, who helped co-found the company. And we do that for a while, usually a couple months, until I think the game is fun and functional enough to share it with other people. Because I don't want to burden our volunteer playtesters with something that just doesn't work. And usually any game that I design, it does not work. It's not fun. It's barely functional for a while. It takes a while for it to get there. And then we have a great group of Stonemaier ambassadors who are essentially volunteers who are passionate about Stonemaier Games. There's around 1,000 of them around the world. And there's a select group of them that I've determined are really great playtesters. And so I send digital files to them to playtest, usually 3 times within around 2 weeks. So pretty tight time frame. I need them to get through 3 playtests. They answer a lot of questions based on data and their experiences about the game. And I do compensate them for their time because I know that anyone's time is valuable. And I usually pay them around $75 in store credit or over PayPal for their time for doing that.
And this is interesting because not a lot of companies, smaller companies can't afford it, and bigger companies maybe just don't think of it.
Right.
But I feel like not just the pay, but the games you get, the pay can create an environment where they're answering questions that you really want from playtesters, because the questions aren't, is this game good or bad? The questions are, what happens when A occurs and then B occurs? Right. You want that data. Yeah. Yeah.
There's so many situations, examples like that really help when a playtester runs into something that happens in the game, and they experience a moment of, usually it's frustration. Sometimes it's a moment of a lot of fun, where they have a lot of fun with a certain moment that I hadn't identified. Both of those are very helpful data points for them to share with me.
That's great. That's great. I think that is a fantastic model for all publishers out there. I wish everybody went that route. I think you'd get some quality games on the market and create this kind of underlayer of people that are just supporting the industry like that. Now, when you said ambassadors, I noticed the ambassador program from your company and something called the Stonemaier Champions.
Yes.
What's the difference between those two programs?
Yeah, they're very similar names, which definitely confuses people sometimes. The ambassadors are just volunteers. So they're people who volunteer to playtest, volunteer to teach games at conventions, volunteer to proofread. And like I mentioned with the playtesting, usually this leads to some form of compensation. But it starts out with them saying, I'm passionate about Stonemaier Games, I want to help. Champions, our champion program is a paid membership program where people can pay $15 a year to save 25% on anything they buy from our web store throughout that year. And the $15 also goes to support the content that I create for the YouTube channel and the content I create for fellow creators on the Stonemaier Games blog.
Great.
They also get priority shipping. So it's kind of like a very small version of Amazon Prime with some content support along the way.
It's
that program, right. Yeah. Actually, I'm curious for Anna and Alfredo on that topic. Do you sell all games to retailers and distributors, or do you sell any of your games directly on your web store? Do you have a web store? Yeah.
Yes, we have a web store.
Both of them.
Basically, we sell direct to stores and distributors. Our core is to help the shops selling games. Basically, not us directly to the customers.
To the end consumer.
Yes. Yeah. Then we have a part that privates can surely buy but it's not something we push or we work on.
Yeah, we normally sell to specialized websites,
Okay.
and they sell to the end consumer.
Okay. And I would say that's the case for us too, mostly. Last year, 82% of our sales were either to distributors, retailers, or localization partners like you. And then around 18% were direct sales, direct revenue through our web store.
Thank you for the report of the stakeholder. We appreciate it a lot.
Now, Jamey, not just with Ghenos in Italy, with Scythe, but you have another connection that Americans may not have put your name together with. But you have a game about being in Italy, right, and growing wine. Can you talk to us a little bit about viticulture?
Yeah, viticulture was the first game that I designed for the purpose of publication. And one of the reasons I chose that theme is that I wanted a theme that I thought would appeal to gamers and to maybe people whose husband or wife was a gamer and they weren't into it yet. So I wanted to bring more people into the hobby through the theme. Oh yeah, there it is.
Everybody can see the art there from Anna and Alfredo. They have it on their shelf.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately I haven't ever actually been to Italy, and so Anna and Alfredo have invited me over the years to visit. And as soon as this pandemic is over, I'm going to take them up on that invitation.
You will be our host. You know that. You know that.
We're waiting for you.
You are waiting to Italy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to go someday. And we do have a new expansion in the works too. We have finished the design for the expansion. Yeah, and we're working on the typesetting. So
you have to visit these hills, wonderful hills.
Yeah,
that specific hill. Yeah,
in person.
And then Alfredo, do you have a question?
Yes, you were talking about happiness and what people playing, testing games, right? What they experience, and I was struck with what you said, and I read what you said in the report. Joy is always our goal. We don't measure success by money, units sold, rankings, followers, or awards. Those are just metrics. So this is, I think, it's a style. It's probably your style and Alan's style, also in life, and the way of conducting, not only for the classes, but the way of living your business. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah. And like I say in that post, I think those metrics are helpful. It's good to have different ways to measure success. But when it comes down to it, the reason that I'm in this business is to bring joy to people worldwide. And I really mean that worldwide part of it. And that's why we have localization partners, because we're not just looking to bring joy to tabletops in the US. We're looking to bring them to people in Italy and Australia and Japan and all over the world. It really all comes down to that. And having that as a single point, as a single mission for us has been helpful for me many times when I'm making decisions about pricing, when I'm making decisions about what to make next, or when I'm making decisions about how to respond to someone online who maybe is angry about something that we've done. I try to always remember that the reason that I'm having that conversation or the reason that I'm making that product is to bring you joy, to bring someone else joy. And it really helps to have that mission. Yeah.
I think people perceives this. It's understandable.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Jamey, when we talk about joy, a lot of people's definition of joy is Scythe. It's well loved, well received. What makes that game, in your opinion, fantastic, addictive, coming back to play it over and over again? What do you think its success is a result of?
That's a great question. I'd love to be able to emulate that in other games that I design. I tried with Tapestry. Tapestry hasn't quite taken off as Scythe did, but I tried with it. I think it's a combination of a few different factors. I think one big factor that I don't want to ignore and give credit to is Jakub Rosalski's world building and art. I think he did a wonderful job and has continued to do a wonderful job in building that world and presenting it through his illustrations. And so I think when someone new sits down at the table with Scythe, they feel like they're in a different world, but it's familiar, but it's different. I think he's done a wonderful job with that. And I think the mechanisms, one of the big parts about Scythe, in many different mechanisms, is a sense of progress. Everything you do is rewarding and it's moving you forward. And so even when you don't win a game of Scythe, for the most case, I'm sure there are edge cases, but for the most part, I think you have a feeling that you have built something new, that you've done something creative, and that you've had moments of cleverness. And that's what I look for in any game that I love. But I think Scythe does that in a number of different mechanisms in the game.
That's great. Yeah. Now, when we talk about Scythe, what was done first? Did you have the initial design and then you paired it with the world, or did the world inspire the design?
It was a little bit of both. Very originally, Jakob had started to share around 8 to 10 illustrations of this world that he had in his head. He had started to share these illustrations online. And that's when I discovered them, when he was around 10 illustrations in. And I reached out to Jakob and said, I love what you're building here. I would love to be a part of it in the tabletop game space. And that led to a great collaboration where I didn't have any game design ideas before that. I didn't have any mechanisms. They were entirely built around the art and around the world. And it went the other way too, because Jakob ended up building a lot of the world and the art based on the fact that there would be a tabletop game in that world. So it was a fun two-way collaboration there.
Wow, that's really neat to learn that it just kind of melded together, because oftentimes it's one or the other, and Andrew wanted to know here. He says, "Hi, thanks for your work, Jamey. Just wanted to say it's hard to find Viticulture Tuscany Essential Edition here in Italy at the moment. Do you know if any reprints are planned?"
Well, that's a good question. We often get people asking about the localized versions of our games, and I love for our localization partners to answer them. So, Anna and Alfredo, why don't you let Andrew know the status of Tuscany in Italy?
Do you guys know?
Tuscany, of course. I've already asked it to Alex.
So at this point, we do reprints around 4 times a year. We do quarterly reprints. And that way, by combining, so we're making more copies of Tuscany. Ghenos is making more copies of Tuscany. And we do that together so that we can save on certain costs when we're making, particularly the non-printed components. So, Andrew, I think we are currently waiting on the reprint that started a few months ago to arrive. And it should arrive in May, maybe June, with how slow freight shipping is right now.
Great, that's good news. That's excellent news. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's see here.
It looks like Michelle has a question about Jamey's favorite faction inside.
That's right. What is your favorite faction?
He's an Italian, Jamey, of course.
I jump around a little bit between the different factions, but my favorites when I sit down to play are the ones that I'm not very good at, because I like a challenge when I play Scythe. And so I'm not very good with Saxony. I'm not very good with Albion. So those are usually the two that I gravitate towards. I don't think I've ever won a game with either of those factions. Even though they're good factions, I'm just not very good at them.
Okay, now I'm going to go a little off topic here and ask you, what's your favorite color in Magic?
Favorite color in Magic? I jump around a lot because when I play Magic, I draft, and so it can really depend on the draft itself. But in games in general, I usually play red. That's my color of choice when I play games. So I imagine there's some subconscious preference for red in Red Rising.
That's great. That's great. Jamey, on the topic of people who want to become game designers, we talk a lot about game design in the pre-Kickstarter days and the post-Kickstarter days. In the pre-Kickstarter days, if you wanted to be a game designer, you kind of had to know someone, cut your teeth doing a project for a big company. But that's simply not the case nowadays with Kickstarter. So what do you tell people to do first when they have an idea for a game and they want to be a game designer?
Well, it kind of to piggyback off the way you phrase that question is, I think it's helpful early on to decide if you want to be a game designer or if you want to be a game publisher, because it is fairly easy now to run a Kickstarter campaign and suddenly you are not just a designer, you are a publisher for even just that one game. And that is a very different set of responsibilities than if you're just being a game designer. And so if that is something that people are thinking about, I think it's good to figure that out early on. If your passion is just the game design side, or if you also have that entrepreneurial creator drive as well. But if you do just want to be a game designer and you want to focus on that, I suggest playing a lot of games, doing what I do and following a lot of reviews for games, because you can't play every game, but you can still learn about a lot of games, and get that first prototype to the table. Even if it's a very simple game, I think it helps to get over that startup barrier of actually trying to make something and get it to the table for the first time.
Yeah. And I think too, there's often two kinds of game designers. I think there's the ones that have their favorite project that they're going to spend the rest of their lives in this world. And then there's the game designers who are studying all the mechanics and they're just wanting to produce a lot of different things based on what the experience they pull in from all over. And I feel like that knowing that identity before you go into it is key as well. So you are not just a game designer, you are a publisher, you do both.
Right.
What is your day like at Stonemaier? How does the day go?
Yeah, my average day involves a lot of communications in the morning. So usually I wake up to a lot of emails and I go through those emails in the morning, and I'm on email all day, but I try to get through my inbox in the morning. A lot of it is project management. So I'm coordinating with artists and graphic designers and freight shipping companies and Panda, our manufacturer, coordinating with a lot of different people. In the afternoon, if I'm lucky, I usually afternoon or night, I maybe get an hour or two of game design time or game development time. I do spend a fair amount of time working with other designers who are working on games for our company or working on expansions for our company. So I spend time working on the development side of that, the playtesting side of it. And a lot of my day, usually in any given day, there's rarely a day that there isn't a problem to solve. Almost every day there's some fire to put out, something to troubleshoot. And so sometimes that's a 5-minute problem and sometimes that's an all-day problem. And so that's generally part of my day as well. Yeah. I'm curious, actually, Anna and Alfredo, I love that question. What does an average day look like for you?
We are problem solvers. I think this is the average.
The average of the most part of the day, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I think a lot of publishers would say that. I just think anything can pop up, from graphic design to play testing to logistics to retailer. I mean, all of it is just a big problem solving day. It's nice to know that goes on in Italy too.
Yeah, of course we are not game designer, and so we take care more about marketing or sales, but a lot we are taking care about partners. So we are managing the localization projects, and we make a lot of translation, review, because the mistakes are always present, as you mentioned, Jamie, as you mentioned in the report.
Yes.
Right. And so there is a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, here's a question from Andrew. The question is always, what comes first, the theme or the engine? No matter which does come first, what theme would you, Jamey, really love to be able to design a game around?
What theme would I love to design a game around? I mean, one theme that I love in fiction is time travel and time loop fiction, like Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow. I love time loop fiction. And so that's a theme that I love. However, there are some games in that genre that I really already love. Like Time Stories is one of my favorite games. I love Time Stories, and that already kind of embraces that theme. So it's something I think about. I might put it into one of my games as part of those games, but unless I can think of a new and creative way of doing it that other games haven't done, I don't know if I'll actually explore that theme. But it is a theme in fiction that I love.
I think that would be an interesting game mechanic to be sort of stuck in the Groundhog Day thing, where it's like you're trying to change things, but then the day resets. I mean, there's a game in there. There's definitely a game in there. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your design work with other people. Are you a game designer that likes to develop games by yourself, or do you like to collaborate with other game designers?
Yeah, this has changed over the years. Early on, I worked with my business partner, Alan, on games, but it was mostly me. I was the lead designer for these games, and he was pretty much the lead play tester. And that relationship worked really well. And then over the years, I've worked with people on expansions. So several of the Scythe expansions started really as fan expansions, and then I ended up working with the designer. I really enjoyed that process, because usually when I design a game, I put all of my the ideas that work into the core game, and I typically do not have ideas for the expansions. I've already cut all those ideas that didn't work, and I put everything else into the game. So it is helpful for me to work with co-designers on expansions. And then right now, I actually Red Rising, Anna and Alfred have held of that book before, that our new game Red Rising. I worked with a co-designer on that, who eventually became our director of sales, Alex. And that was a really fruitful process. I really enjoyed that. So that kind of opened me up to the possibility of doing that in the future as well. So yeah, it kind of comes and goes. There's some games that I just want to focus on. I just want to be the designer on that game, not out of ego, but just out of convenience. But sometimes I need someone to bounce back and forth on ideas. Bryce, do you have any experience with that, working with a co-designer versus solo design?
Yeah, I do love the collaboration once I get through an initial game design. So, for instance, Baker Street and the Sherlock Holmes RPG that I did, I didn't want to work with anybody until I knew exactly how we were going to approach a mystery and case. But I have been blessed by so many females have embraced Baker Street. I have more girls and women playing at Baker Street table than I do guys. And I knew right away that I had tapped something that was just great. And so I went out and found all the best female writers I could, and have worked with them on. They just do a fantastic job writing cases. And now whenever I'm able to show that game off at conventions, my GMs are all females. My stories are all mostly written by females, and everybody enjoys it. And so I found a neat way to tap the whole diversity element. And as long as I have the initial design in mind, then I love the extra ideas. And it's a lot like what you're saying, where you get this core idea done and you're thinking, I don't know if that needs something else.
Yeah.
But then some fan or some other game designer comes along and says, hey, I got an idea. And you go, whoa. And that collaboration process is fantastic.
Yeah.
Anna and Alfredo, how is the relationship works between you and the game designers, particularly when you're dealing with an international environment? Like, do you have a lot of language barriers? How does that relationship work? I mean, you both speak English very well.
Yes, but you were mentioning the game designer when we produce our games, basically. So that's the question. Well, the game designers were initially Italian, so it wasn't hard. With the leader one, the game designer is French, and he didn't really know English very well.
But Anna speaks very well French.
Not very well. I speak French. So we had a lot of calls with Skype, and in me translating and helping out Alfredo, but Alfredo, if someone speaks French slowly, but French and Italian are similar, so he started learning and understanding something. So with that helps also with French, and also with the relationships with other partners, French partners, and
generally speaking, I'm sure, I'm convinced that for moving any kind of idea, so also a rule, a mechanic, brainstorming is very important. Try to challenge any idea, to stress any idea is very important. And this is a general rule in life, but I think especially when you create a rule book, something very complex, and the mechanics that should transfer a blast of joy to the people. So it's very important, the brainstorming.
Mm-hmm. And internationally, the rule book becomes more important, right? Because the translation has to be has to make sense going from language to language in order to really enjoy the experience and not be frustrated. Yeah.
Yes, you have to balance on one side. You have to give what the author wants people to be read. If they wrote in a certain way, you have to understand if they want them to stick to that style, or you're free to change something. So this is and I think. Mostly depends on how well written at the beginning the rules are, and Jamey writes rules very well. very clear and straightforward, and translating his rule book is easy and straightforward, and enjoy doing that.
This is interesting to me because. Jamey, you've said this, and I find this such a great insight into game design. When you work with playtesters, you have referenced that I don't want to say the word remember too much. Can you talk a little bit about why that is?
Yeah. So you're referring to something that I pay attention to when I'm teaching a game to playtesters here, or if it's tougher for playtesters to report it. Usually it's when I'm teaching a game that I've designed. And if I find myself, as I'm teaching it, saying, remember, the word remember to do this, or remember whenever you do this, you need to do this. If I am saying that word, then it's a cue to me that I have not designed the interface of the game so that players don't have to remember that. I shouldn't be asking players to remember something. The game should tell them how that works in the icons, if there needs to be a reference card in the player mats, because we have so many games in our heads at this point. How many rules to games do we know? But to ask players to also remember those additional details that they can't see in the interface of the game, that they have to find somewhere hidden in the rule book, it's just too much, and they're going to forget. They're going to forget that rule. So that is that's neat of you to mention that, Bryce, because that's kind of a rule that I try to remember when I'm playtesting games that I've designed.
I think that is an insight that I will use from now on. Is that when you design, I like to design in layers. So I have a very basic layer that everybody learns, and then you add a little complexity. Do you find that's the way you approach it, or do you have a different matrix to it all?
That is definitely my preferred style. Yeah, it's interesting because with Scythe has a long rule book, has a 32-page rule book, but people generally have given me good feedback about that rule book. At the same time, I've tried to move away from big chunky rule books into what you just described, kind of teaching and adding on things in layers, both in terms of how much information you need to actually take your first turn in the game. I never like when I have to sit down at a game and then wait 30 minutes to learn how to play. I want to start taking turns and learn in layers as I'm participating in the game. And so I've tried to also design our rule books and our teaching methods around that as well.
Yeah. And particularly in board games, not so much in role-playing games, but board games have this iconography that can teach you what to do. And do you find that you do more of that as time goes on, or or are you explaining in different ways? What's that process?
Yeah, I mean, we do have some games that have quite a few icons. I try not to lean too heavily on icons unless they're very clear and very intuitive. Because if I'm going to throw 20 icons at someone, that's a fair amount of icons for someone to understand and remember. One of my favorite things to do is to pair icons with text that also explains the icons. So you have the icons there, you can easily see them from across the table, but you have the text there to explain it. You don't have to reference what they mean in the rule book unless it's really, really intuitive. And actually, I want to mention this here because I learned this, I think, from Anna and Alfredo a few years ago. I asked them about language dependence or language independent games. And Anna and Alfredo, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but one thing I learned that I thought was really interesting is that I think you told me that you liked games that are language dependent because it means that you have more of a reason to publish it in Italian versus just having a completely language independent game that someone could just download the rulebook for. Is that correct?
Is that correct? Yeah. It's correct, and we prefer definitely to have a language dependency because it's more characteristics. It's of course it's harder to translate to work, but it's our job, and we love this. And we are also appreciating the gift of synthesis in the last rule books. For example, I loved the Pendulum rule book and also the Red Rising rule book. It's you're doing. It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you are doing a lot of efforts to make the rule book more synthetic, more easy to be learned, and this is very important, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's something. It's definitely a learning process, learning over the years from game to game. But I'm trying to make rulebooks better and better at doing that, both as for that first experience when you're learning the game, and also then later when you need to reference the rulebook for a question. It's a tough task. Some companies even have 2 different rulebooks for that purpose. I've tried to combine them into the same rulebook.
Yeah. Of course, keeping the barrier of the language that we need.
Right.
Yeah, we definitely need.
I'm reminded of when we talk about the iconography of one of my wife's favorite games, Cyclades. And when you first open that box, all it is this reference screen of symbols. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems to have this overwhelming moment that hits you because there's too many.
Right.
And then you get to play it and you realize, this means this and this means this, and it's very simple and fun. But I think you're right, Jamey, in the iconography that it needs to be simple and a small amount in the game design.
Yeah. That's my preference.
Jamey, who are there any game designers out there that you're just right now following and going, man, she's doing great, or he's doing great? Are you a fanboy of anybody in particular?
Oh yeah, quite a few other designers. Yeah. I mean, some of some all-time favorites that I always admire, I'm always curious about what they're making, are Alexander Pfister, Uwe Rosenberg, and Rob Daviau. I think they're all very talented storytellers in their games in different ways. And more recently, I mean, Ryan Lockett is the designer of Red Raven Games. I love what he's creating. I loved his recent game, Sleeping Gods. That's a fantastic game. And
localized to Italy.
Oh, really?
Hockey. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
By the way,
that's awesome. Yeah. He's incredibly talented in many different ways. Yeah, those are a few of my favorites. What about you all? Who are a few designers that you would that you really admire?
I'll let Anna and Alfredo answer first.
But
I would say Jamey.
Yes.
other than me.
If I could, I would end the show right here.
Just for Jamey. Not difficult to say. And I'm loving also. I'm loving Red Rising. Also, the game is. I think the game will be a great success. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
I would have to say, Jamey, I follow your game designs. I love Corey's work on Battlestar Galactica that came out a few years ago. I love a good friend of mine who I kind of met through being designers was Jeff Sidek with Battle Stations and Lifeboat. I'm a big theme guy. You really have to tug me to go to a Euro as a general rule. But Stronghold is one of my all-time favorite Euros because it's a war game Euro, which I've been waiting years for someone to come out with. But yeah, those are the kind of guys I follow. Here's a question from Jamey. How much of MTG is in Red Rising? Now, Jamey, I used to work for Wizards of the Coast, but I no longer do. So feel free to answer this question.
I see. I didn't know that you used to work with them. What aspect of the company did you work with?
I was a customer service supervisor for a number of years.
Okay.
So we were at our houses answering questions, and I had a team of people. Yeah. Is there any inspiration from a game, let's just say fantasy in general, anything like that in Red Rising?
Well, I mean, for Magic the Gathering specifically, I can say that one of the big things that I learned from Magic are the concept of card cycles. So a card cycle in Magic is if they have a similar mechanism or a similar card design used across each of the colors in the game. So they might have a green card that is kind of similar to a red card that's also kind of similar to a black card. And I love that concept. And we use that throughout Red Rising. Red Rising is a game of card cycles, essentially. And I've done that in other games as well. So that's definitely a direct inspiration there.
Great. Andrew wants to know, what game are you most proud of?
That's always tough for me to answer because we put so much time and love and resources into all the games that we work on. One game that I kind of fall back on for this question is Between Two Cities, because Between Two Cities was the first game we published that wasn't designed by me. It was designed by Ben and Matthew, two wonderful designers. Yeah. And so it was great. That was, I think, an important step in Stonemaier Games to say, okay, we're not just going to publish my games. We're going to publish games from other designers as well that fit our gaming philosophy. Alfredo, you've met Ben and Matthew, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
We met him in Essen, I think.
Ben in Jenkins.
But we met the first time. It was we
you're
saw
right.
him in Essen somewhere.
And by the way, we published Between Two Cities before than Scythe.
That's right.
A few months earlier. It's a game that I have a good. I love Between Two Cities. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's great.
Me too.
It's great. Yeah. Jamey, let's. Since you have this company now, how freeing and amazing is it to be able to go to talent and say, I'm going to make that one of my games as a publisher? I mean, obviously, the success that's been brought on has put you in a position where you can do this. And talk a little bit about that.
Well, the aspect of it that feels the best to me, I mean, it's an honor and privilege that people submit games to us now. That is a wonderful. I think last year we had nearly 200 game submissions to us, which is great. It's also a lot to go through because we only publish 1 or 2 games a year, and we've planned pretty far into the future at this point. But the thing that I feel the best about, that feels really, really good, is when we have a game, when I can basically bring a game that feels right for Stonemaier Games and for fans of our games, and that can also be successful for the designer and the artist and all the other people that are involved for it, our localization partners. It's one of the reasons that I feel so great about Wingspan. I'm so glad that Wingspan has done well because it has done amazing things for Elizabeth Hargrave. It's created careers for the artist, Natalia and Anna. their career is now built around Wingspan. There are companies like Broken Token and MeepleSource who create tokens, special tokens for these games. So it's creating opportunities for them too. And so that feels so good to me to see a game bring life to so many people directly in terms of their careers. That makes me happy every day when I see that.
That's great. That's fantastic. I love gamers propping up gamers.
Yeah,
the cycle kind of continuing. Jamey, are you planning on attending any conventions that might come back? Where can we find you? Where can we hunt you down? Where can we say thanks? Where can we steal a copy of Scythe? Where are you
there's a convention in St. Louis that I generally try to attend because I love this convention. It's called Geekway to the West. And so if you want to ever just play a game with me, Geekway to the West is the one to come to because I love just playing a variety of games with a variety of people at Geekway. I am really hoping Anna and Alfredo invited me to join them at Luca, a convention in not in 2021, but maybe in 2022, I think would be the year.
For sure, 2022.
Yeah.
Still pending the 2021. Of course, there are some doubts, especially because the rating of vaccination in Italy is quite slow. So cross fingers.
Yeah.
But I would prefer to say come and be our guest in 2022. It's more safe.
And that is definitely my hope because that way I get the Italy trip. I get to meet many gamers in Italy that I wouldn't otherwise get to meet. I get to hang out with Anna and Alfredo. So that is my dream convention right now to attend.
Yeah, and it's a big one if I'm not mistaken, right? Anna and Alfredo, it's a very large convention.
Yes. It started off with manga comics, basically, as
and
a
also
fair,
movies,
and
fictions.
it's grown really from when we started, went the first time, and now it's really great. It's nice because it's in Lucca, which is a medieval town, and with walls, and all the town is closed. Just people attending
and the period is Halloween period, so thematic.
Yes, and all the city of the town for 4 or 5 days is really involved, and it's really a particular fair. Yeah.
But anyway, Jamey, we are going to reach you in St. Louis again.
That's right.
As soon as we can. Okay.
You're always welcome here.
They can come to Fort Wayne and we'll carpool to Jamey's place.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I love St. Louis, the Mississippi, the Arch. We really enjoyed it. Yeah, we really enjoyed the city.
Well, that's great. Jamey, you are all over social media. You are a social media guru. And I wish I had half the skill that you do. But anybody can check out Jamey's amazing YouTube channel where you can see his top 10 list. You can find out how to be a game designer. You can find out what mechanic he is really jazzed about in the latest game. And not only that, but you can go to the website, Stonemaier Games, and buy whatever you want. Check with your friendly local gaming store. Let's all keep those people in mind here, particularly in the pandemic. Jamey, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful
to see you.
Yeah.
And Alfredo, it's been great having you two on.
Thank you for inviting us, and thank you, Jamey. It has been a pleasure. It's great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
We're going to do a full show on Ghenos Games coming up in May, so please please stay tuned for that. Next week is the designers of Deep Vents we're going to have here on the show. This has been Bryce Whitaker for Anna Alfredo and Jamey Stegmaier. Thank you so much for coming to the Gamers Lunch Break. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.